Good evening. Today is September 27, 2022. The time now is 5:32 p.m. Today's meeting is the Teaching and Learning Committee of the Bridgeport Board of Education. In attendance, we have myself, Chair Christine Baptiste Perez, Board Member Joseph Lombard, and Committee Member Joseph Lombard, and we also have Board Member Joseph Sokolovic in attendance. And for staff, we have Superintendent Michael Testani. The first item that we have on the agenda is for the approval of minutes for May 16th, 2022.
So moved to approve the minutes.
I second. Do we have any comments or revisions to the minutes?
I do not.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion for approval of the minutes from May 16, 2022 has been approved. The second item on the agenda is discussion and possible action on Fairchild Wheeler's field trip to Sleepy Hollow, New York, and Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge in New York. In attendance, we have
This is Cliff Price. He's going to be leading the field trip, and Jayla Principal Aerospace.
Okay, just 1 second. We're going to get you a microphone so it can be recorded.
I'm Cliff Price. I am an ECE American Studies teacher at Fairchild Wheeler, and it's my field trip that I have planned to Sleepy Hollow and to the formerly known as Tappan Zee Bridge.
Yeah, and Jayla Principal of the Aerospace School, I approved the package and sent it up to the Deputy Superintendent for approval.
Okay. Are there any questions from board committee members for the field trip?
No, I'd just be curious to hear a little bit about it. I'd just be curious to hear a little briefly about it.
Sure. Our American Studies class, that is a component of the UConn ECE network of courses, explores American culture, past, present, and even future. And so every year I try to start out the semester with a look at something more local. Several years ago, I took students up to the Southwick Jog in Massachusetts, also known as the Connecticut Notch, an area that was disputed between the colonies of Massachusetts and Connecticut way back when. And every year I try to go somewhere else to kind of build a portfolio of sites visited so that future students can learn more about this area, of which, you know, some of them have grown up their entire lives in Fairfield County, but haven't been very far away from here. And so one of the things we are doing this year is something I hadn't done before, was looking at the kind of gets overlooked in history and in culture is the Dutch influence on the Hudson River Valley. And so we're going to be reading stories by Washington Irving, who is probably the premier writer about that area in terms of his Legend of Sleepy Hollow and his Rip Van Winkle, which is on the other side of the Hudson River. And since this is also part of the aerospace engineering school, we try to do everything a little bit thematically. And so I always try to incorporate some engineering feats in the field trips we do as well, or at least try to. In this particular case, Sleepy Hollow and Tarrytown are right next to the new Governor Mario Cuomo bridge, and the new bridge has a walking span, a bike walking span, and so the kids can come out and we can get a view like they've probably never seen before of the Hudson River Valley. So it's going to be a little mix of history and culture and engineering all together in one day.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Sokolovic, do you have any questions or comments?
Yes, thank you. How many students in the 12th grade, and was this offered to all students?
It was only for students in the Intro to American Studies ECE course.
And how many students in that class?
That is 10 students.
Oh, just 10 students.
But only 9
Only 9.
are going on the trip.
That's all I got. Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge for the record that board member Albert Benaham is available virtually. Good evening, Mr. Benaham.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Benaham, do you have any questions or comments regarding the field trip?
No, I don't have no question. I was okay with Mr. Joe Sokol said. So he answered my question. Thank you.
I had a look at the field trip. Everything was submitted. I just have one question regarding transportation for the field trip. It states in the packet, activity bus owned by Bridgeport Public Schools. Am I missing something? We own buses?
We own one.
Yeah, we actually own one. We bought it with the contract and we built the school in 2013. There's also another one, sister bus that's right behind the Aquaculture Center. They use it as we do for local events. We have drivers like Mr. Price, myself, and a few other of our teachers have the proper license to operate a service bus for students on board. This bus, unfortunately, has, because it's parked by the school, has gotten vandalized a couple times. So we're looking at buying one that we can put in a secure location at the school and trading this in. But that's another thing that I'll probably present to the board in the future.
Okay. Oh, no, you learn something every day. I think that was the only question I had. And so seeing that there's no other questions or comments from the committee or board members, I'll entertain a motion at this time for approval on Fairchild Willard's trip to Sleepy Hollow, New York, and the Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge in New York.
One other point, ma'am, sorry to interrupt. We put down the 11th and the 13th as a rain date because it's an outside activity. So I just want to make sure the board members were aware of it, that it's not open-ended, but what we wanted to do was, because it's going to be, we're going to take the bus there. They're going to do a lot of walking, and inclement weather would invalidate the trip and not get the experience. So we put down a rain date, and the form doesn't really have it, but we made it pretty clear and informed the parents that we're going to do that. I wanted to make sure that was all right with the board.
Yeah, I actually saw that in the packet. It makes a lot of sense with the bridge crossing, although it could, back in those days, they didn't really have a chance to call a rain date or tell if it was going to rain in advance, so it could have been part of the culture. But if I'm in high school and you expect me to cross a bridge in the rain by foot, I probably wouldn't want to go on that trip.
And we're not planning on walking the entire span. The children would revolt, I assume, on me if I wanted to make them go the whole way across there. So, but
Halfway.
yeah, we'll walk some of it.
Mr. Lombard, you had a comment?
No, I was just saying, I was just remembering how many miles it was. Is it 3 across?
It's 3.
I think it's
3 miles across.
3
Yeah,
miles across, yeah.
That's one way?
Yeah.
that is one way. It's the Tappan Zee. Z is Dutch for sea, because it's the wide area of the Hudson River. Tappan is from a sub-tribe of the Delaware Native Americans there, but now we no longer call it the Tappan Zee, but it'll forever be the Tappan Zee to me.
Oh, I feel like I'm in class now. Love it. Yeah, I noticed the rain date. I understand why it's being held. Darn it, to not walking the full bridge though. But thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate the clarification still. Is there a motion to approve the item with the contingent rain date?
Just to move to the full board?
Yes.
Yeah, so moved.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. This will be presented to the full board. I don't think you're up on the next full regular board meeting, which will be in about 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure it's not on today's agenda. So thank you.
I believe it might be on today's agenda with the anticipation that it could have.
Nope.
No, it didn't make it.
Nope.
If the 11th is the date with the 13th as a backup, so that's Tuesday, which is the date of the next board meeting.
Mr. Sokolovic?
Yeah, might have suggested we could just edit to the agenda by 2/3 when it comes up, since there seems to be very little really discussion to be had, and it seems like a no-brainer.
No, yeah, we can do that, but then it would have to be moved to the bottom of the agenda for today, which could be a long
Yeah,
meeting.
I don't see much pushback. I think we probably get 2/3 pretty easy, because this is not a controversial issue. It's something that can be dispensed with quickly, and I suggest we add it to the beginning of the agenda to get them home.
Yep.
Expeditiously.
And that's two separate Robert's Rules amendments, because you gotta have a special vote to get it onto the agenda, and then you have to make an amendment to the agenda schedule itself, but it can be done.
So I should stick around.
I'll,
what you're
Mr.
saying.
Price, I'll take care of it.
Okay.
I'll be here. Okay?
Oh, but
Thank
then
you
the rest
for
of the
your
board won't get the history lesson.
You can stick around.
He knows it as well as I do. All right, thank you very much for your
Thank
time. I really appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is discussion of the Smarter Balance test scores, commonly known as the SBAC, for students in grades 3rd through 8th and 11th grade for the 21-22 school year. Mr. Testani?
So if you refer to our Smarter Balance, thank you. We tried to break this up. There's plenty to sift through when it comes to school overall. Percentage of students, that was the request, that met proficient, but we decided that we'd also like to put it in better context. So we did share Smarter Balance assessment trends since 17-18, included 18-19. There was no testing in 19-20, and then it resumed last year in 21-22. And as you can see, there was pretty much from 17-18 to 18-19, there was a slight gain in English language arts, very slight gain in math, and that was the first year, 18-19, of the NGSS testing here in science, so we do have some baseline data there to compare to. As you can see, there was a decline from 18-19 to 21-22 for obvious reasons with the pandemic. Also, we'd like to try to get some matching pairs from that, and that's going to take a little bit more time to really decipher the kids that tested in 18-19 and also tested again in 21-22. Early indications are there are from grades 3 on up. We ran some reports. Actually, last week I asked, and this had nothing to do with this request for this meeting, but just to get an idea of how many students in grades 3 and higher have been in the district 3 years or less. So for obvious reasons, we didn't pick second grade and below because that would be all of them. So we went above, and right now we're at about 3,000 students. So there's been a in and out of about 6,000 students here in the district over the last 3 years because of our pretty flat total enrollment. So compared to the other districts in our DIRG, except for Hartford and New Britain, we're flat with Waterbury. We're pretty flat in the change against the state in the overall decline. And then we do significantly better compared to others. In math, we're far less in the negative category due to the pandemic than the state of Connecticut. And we are significantly better than some of our other comparable districts. And in science, we're slightly better than the state average. And it's a mixed bag when it comes to the comparison in our DIRG. What is encouraging is, as you can see in the SAT school day trend, English language arts, we remain pretty much flat from pre to post pandemic, which I think is encouraging, and lost a couple of points in the math area, but not significant. And we're outperforming the trend statewide, and also DIRG. So that's some preliminary, and these percentages are met or exceeded level 3 or level 4 when you look at the Smarter Balance. Any questions at this point before we can talk a little bit about some of the growth trend data that is much more encouraging than the initial data here on the met or exceeded level 3 or level 4.
Questions for Mr. Lombard? Comments?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Mr. Sokolovic, you have any questions or comments?
Still digesting this.
Right.
Initial.
Yeah.
So this is quite depressing.
Mr. Benaham, do you have any questions or comments?
Not at this moment. Thank you.
No. So first, I want to thank you, Mr. Testani, and the staff for getting this information over to us. I know I had dropped some of the requested information initially just due to timing constraints. And this is actually a topic that I will probably continue discussing, because this is just for discussion, in another teaching and learning committee meeting, because there is a lot to unpack from this. Because looking at the data, I know it's very important to look at growth, and I know it is a issue, not only in Bridgeport, but across the country with learning loss during COVID. So it's interesting to see what it was pre-pandemic, at least for the 2018-19 school year, where overall for our district, 18-19, we were seeing growth to the extent that in ELA, 27.4% of our students, and this is looking at the first page you gave us.
Yep.
27.4%. Is that for all the grades that tested? That was the average proficiency level?
Those are the number of students that met or exceeded, so had a level 3 or level 4 score.
Okay. So approximately 27%. So we had about 73% not at grade, not proficient or above.
Not meeting or exceeding.
Not meeting or exceeding.
Correct.
ELA for the 18-19 school year.
Correct.
And so we saw a change in about 7% drop this school year.
Right.
So,
With this past spring's testing, we saw about a 7% drop from the 18-19 school year.
and so is it a fair assessment to say that about 80% of our kids are not meeting their requirement, or how did you phrase that again?
Meeting or exceeding. It's hard to say. I mean, I think the number is as accurate as you're going to get. I think there's a lot of factors that come into play when administering the test as well. It is a test that is done, excuse me, online. So navigating the platform, I think for some of our students, especially some of our young ones, could be quite challenging. That's why when we see more traditionally administered assessments or our teacher administrator assessments in our lower grades, we do see students perform better. So that's, but it's still, even if it's off by a couple of percentage points, it's still a low number. Correct.
Are we offering any kind of like mock or prep testing on the computer in our classrooms so that way students are more prepared?
We do some, district assessments that are on the use of the device. That gives us some indication and are supposed to give us some indication how students will perform on SBAC. And we try to then align intervention throughout the year with students that may not be achieving in the areas and the standards that they're not meeting, in hopes that they will be better prepared to be assessed on Smarter Balance. We also run into some of the testing fatigue, I think, as well, because we are testing students and trying to balance that we're not over testing, especially our elementary students. But sometimes that is a discussion that we have in our executive meetings, if that we are with our formative assessments and baseline assessments and all the things that are required for us to do throughout the year. And then you get toward May and you're doing the Smarter Balance, is if there is some testing fatigue for some children.
Okay. I mean, for the time being, you're with us here in the district, Mr. Testani. I think it's going to be helpful not only to see how the state's performing, because the state's at about 50% meeting or exceeding in ELA, and to see districts like Hartford, New Britain, New Haven. However, I think we should start looking at our neighboring school districts, so Stratford, Trumbull, Fairfield, Circle, Bridgeport, essentially. And we should probably start looking at Fairfield County so we can see how we're performing with our county and our neighboring districts. I think part of aiming for success is to really see where we're at. And these numbers are somewhat disheartening. ELA, the state overall saw about a 7% decrease. So our district kind of matched that, but still 50% of the state met or exceeded ELA, while we have 20% here in Bridgeport. In terms of math, our change rate was better than the state. So about 40% of the state for this year's math SBAC met or exceeded, but only 10% of our students did. And so I think for another discussion is probably, and science, because it's relatively new with data, we didn't see a significant drop. Just again, our drop wasn't as bad as the state, but about 50% of the state was performing, meeting or exceeding, and we're at 17%. And I want to see how we're doing to our immediate neighbors in Fairfield, Fairfield County. That way, as a district, we can actually see how we can push to break out of the slump with our similarly situated districts.
Well, I think it's an unfair comparison to districts in Fairfield County per se. The state sets up the DIRGs to make sure that everything is relatively even in the districts that you're comparing. But we can look at the neighboring towns and see what that looks like.
Yeah, and even if it's just Fairfield County, because that would include the towns, I think it's We can't ignore the fact that Bridgeport's in Fairfield County. Now, we do have the SBAC performance by grade level, but before we move on to that, do we have any questions or comments? Mr. Lombard?
No, I just would comment, that I understand the desire to have different comparisons. This, I think, is most relevant for comparing, but it can't hurt. Thank you. I said, I understand the desire to have different comparisons. The one that we have in front of us with the DIRG, I think, is the most relevant for comparing district to district. However, for purposes of just seeing how we fall next to our neighbors, it's yet another comparison. Another sheet of paper, it couldn't hurt to look at it. But then with that, it's also worth noting that although we definitely are quite a bit below the state, we are pretty much in line with the other districts in our DIRG. So just more of a comment than anything.
Mr. Sokolovic,
Yes.
any questions or comments?
Yeah, a couple of questions and comments. Looking within our district ourselves, there could be some benefits to making some comparisons, even school by school, because not every class within every school saw a COVID slide. We've got some outliers. For instance, if you look at page 1, the Smarter Balance Trend, you've got Barnum, mostly minuses, but in the 4th grade ELA and the 4th grade math, you've got positive growth, 14 and 6 during that time. And in a few other schools, you've got a couple of classes that are outliers. Is it possible that we could disaggregate the data and perhaps the teaching styles or differences in approaches or the pedagogy to perhaps capture the best practices and of those teachers? Because there's something standing out about a lot of these numbers. And because there's not many people that grew, like Beardsley has growth in ELA in the 4th grade and math slightly in the, as well as the 6th grade ELA and math.
Well, I think
Black Rock,
grade 4 in general, it was a positive grade across the district in comparison to other grades. But those were also students who had full kindergarten, and they had pretty much a full 1st grade. So I think some of the trends, as you'll see, and in some schools it's consistency as well, teaching staff.
Right.
There's a variety of things. I don't know if there's any magical pedagogy. I think there could be a number of factors that leads to that, but we do tend to look at and try to make this available.
Right. Oh, I'm no way, shape, or form, to be clear, blaming the teachers.
No, I know.
And their teaching style. I'm just saying there might be just some outlying differences and factors, even outside pedagogy, maybe even because it goes across the grades. Some grades are 7 and 8, where the growth is, like Black Rock, for instance, is 7th and 8th grade, which will they missed a few steps along the way. Yeah, but there's none in the. I don't think I see any in the any 3rd grade growth. Oh wait, that's not true. BLC had. Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm sorry. Apologize. But yeah, it's just like it's just where everybody else shrank, these stood out and grew. And if we could capture the essence as of why, maybe we could capture some more growth to spread across the rest of our district. Just thoughts. I believe that's all I've got.
I like the record to reflect Mr. Benaham is now here in person. Welcome, Mr. Benaham. Did you receive the packet?
Yeah.
Oh, just got it, okay. So I'll let you get a second to look through the information, then I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
Also, for the viewers at home, again, appreciate the staff being able to get this with my short notice request. So we're digesting the information as we go here right now. I have a question though, Mr. Testani. In particular, for Wilbur Cross School, this is information I obviously did not ask for, but could we get the matriculation rate into high school? Because what's alarming to me is that for that school, for the 21-22 school year, 100% participation in the math SBAC, and none of them were proficient and now are in high school.
What do you mean the matriculation rate?
So how many, I mean, if none of them reach proficiency, did we leave back any students? Are all of them in high school?
Well, they wouldn't be left back based on standardized tests. They would, if they passed their courses in 8th grade, they would pass to 9th grade. Grades are the sole indicator of passing to the next grade. Standardized tests do not factor in at all.
And so no percentage of moving up to another grade level is based off of the tests, even though we can have 100% failure?
There's no contribution to promotion based on standardized tests.
That's very different from New York.
Correct.
And even where I taught in Louisiana. Because it's a little bit alarming of our preparation for each student in each grade if they can't pass a standardized test. And there's certain schools where I'm seeing 100% failures in certain grade levels.
There are certain schools that have, over time, faced extreme difficulties in retaining and recruitment of staff. Wilbur Cross is a school that struggles at times, especially in the upper grades. Historically, there's a few others that just have a difficult time when it comes to middle school. I mean, middle school teachers are difficult to find in general, but it becomes more challenging at certain schools. And that's been a historical trend that we try to address annually. It's difficult. This year, I believe the middle school science positions are at a premium right now, and it's hard to find middle school science folks, as well as high school, but math is always a problem. The schools that have a consistent math and ELA teacher in the upper grades tend to do better, as you could imagine, than schools that are constantly replacing and replenishing their middle school staff.
Thank you. Mr. Benahan? Any other questions or comments? I think we'll need.
Chair, I'm sorry, yes, I have a question. I just want to have a question. May I?
Yeah.
Question to Mr. Testani. Mr. Testani, look at this document, this information. Question for you. I see the percent of math of different schools. Are they all schools give the same math, or is it different? Because I see the percents that very different.
The math curriculum is consistent across the district. It's a matter of, again, which schools are able to maintain math teachers and have math teachers consistently year after year after year, and the same math teacher. But we also talked about, I believe, at one of our spring meetings with in teaching and learning, the number of 8th grade students that have been with us since kindergarten. That number, I believe, at the time was 44%. And then that number dropped to 1 in 6th, where in the same school since kindergarten. And if you go to the ninth grade, many of our ninth graders have not been in the district very long at all. That's a trend that's been decades. I remember doing scheduling many years ago at Bassick High School and trying to look at our ninth graders, and our ninth graders coming into that are entering in that fall, and the small percentage that were coming from our middle schools. So they tend to come from many different places. So that's why it's important that we look at the data. That's the matching pairs over time to show the growth, because the kids that are in the same school and they attend school regularly do much better. I mean, it's just.
For all the math are wonderful teachers, math we have. They give the same education to all the students, or different?
Curriculum's the same.
The same. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Stein. No more questions.
We have made some adjustments this year to help address what I've felt is an issue across the district. We've reintroduced in the ninth grade pre-algebra for students that are coming into high school. That's new this year. That changed, probably about 16 years ago, when pre-algebra was eliminated from the high school program of studies and all students took Algebra 1 their freshman year. So we've now layered in, for students that are not ready, the pre-algebra course to be a prerequisite before taking Algebra 1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stein. No more questions, teacher.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Lombard, you had a question or comment?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to tease out, I'm not sure, but I think what Mr. Sokolovic and Mr. Benahan are asking, because I'm just wondering, although the curriculum is the same, are there certain implementations, certain programs that are at certain schools, or because they're piloting it, or certain things? They're all the same. So
Correct.
Okay.
We have a standardized program in math across the district. Now that was not, it was, but there's been a lot of inconsistencies that we've really tried to prohibit as we've moved forward over the last couple of years, to make sure that all teachers are following the instructional routines in the classroom. Administrators know what to look for through professional development and training. So trying to bring that consistency across the district is something we've worked on. We were interrupted briefly with COVID, but the last year we spent a lot of time, and we continue to do that this year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lombard. Mr. Sokolovic, do you have any additional questions or comments?
Nothing further, thank you.
And just as an add-on, we did implement last year for the first time, and we continue this year in grades 6, 7, and 8, Khan Academy as an additional measure for students to be able to work from where they're at and try to grow and improve as we prepare them better for high school. As you can see, some of that work in the ninth grade during the COVID year, I think mitigated the SAT data and the learning loss that was exhibited. I think the use of Khan Academy throughout the pandemic at the high school level, especially with our 9th and 10th graders, had some impact in minimizing the learning loss there.
I have a question. Khan Academy being used in 6, 7, 8.
6 through 12 now.
6 through 12.
Since
now,
last year, yes.
As of last year.
Yes.
And then during, I'm going to just call it COVID, the 2021 school year, what grades was it available to?
9 through 12.
9 through 12. Okay. No, that's good to know, because I was going to ask a question with regard, well, I am going to ask the question. I know for some of our younger students, we have, the term is easy teachers, correct? Or
Yes.
to help them with the tutoring and learning. associated with the pandemic and learning loss. I recall in a past committee meeting discussing how the high schools had different approaches towards learning loss. But I don't recall, do we have kind of like a universal approach for elementary and middle school of how each school is addressing learning loss? Like, are there tutors?
So we have the easy teachers that are working in the primary grades. These are certified elementary teachers that their sole function is to work in small groups to accelerate learning. Now that could be pulling a group of students that are struggling and reinforcing those skills. It could be pulling a group while the teacher teaches a larger group, pulling a group to help accelerate and provide enrichment. We've added and increased the number of teacher leaders that are up to, I think, 227 throughout the district, and their sole responsibility is to provide additional support and professional development to their colleagues within the building, whether it's for math, science, ELA, or special education. So to Mr. Sokolovic's point, to try to support and work on those best practices.
I have a question for the easy teachers. Are they available equally in every school? Like, is it like 2 additional for
based
every
on the size of the school? So a school like Edison School would have 1, a school like Battaglia would have multiple.
Okay,
So it's equitably distributed based on the enrollment of the school.
gotcha. Do we have any programs like that for math? Since I feel like math is the area.
Well, the easy teachers can support ELA, math. They're just certified elementary teachers working in small groups with elementary students. I think one of the issues is that, and we've revamped and put a universal schedule together for elementary schools this year, where there's dedicated number of minutes for ELA, for math, science, and social studies to make sure that the curriculum is being taught and giving equal to math and ELA time for instruction, because in many cases there's more time spent on ELA than math at the primary grades, so in the elementary grades, so to speak. So we're trying to universally make sure that time is dedicated to math, science, social studies, as well as ELA.
Okay. Any more questions or comments from committee or board members? Okay, thank you, Mr. Testani. I think this is a great way to move into the next discussion topic we have on our agenda, which is discussion of district-wide strategies and goals to address accelerated learning and COVID learning loss. I know it's been touched with the addition of lead teachers as well as the implementation of easy teachers in the elementary school.
I know we don't have assigned seats, but you're sitting where you usually sit.
But we're still on teaching and learning.
Okay, no problem.
Board member Sybil Allen has joined the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting. So for this particular topic or agenda item, it in part, we have schools that are struggling, and I know every school is not necessarily the same throughout the district, let alone the circumstances. But I think we need, as a school district, to have a big goal that we're going to be working towards to move our students ahead, whether it's to outperform similar districts like Hartford and New Haven, or increase our test scores. I mean, some schools, it would be nice if we had some proficiency or meeting or exceeding proficiency in math, because we have schools with 100% failure. Is there any kind of, I guess this is the start of that conversation to have it in the district.
Well, So we've spent the majority of last year working on a strategic plan for the Bridgeport Public Schools. After several months of developing that plan, we have now begun, as of today, we're beginning to pilot the aspects of that strategic plan in certain departments. That will then be rolled out slowly throughout the year. For the plan is final presentation of the district strategic plan to the Board of Education sometime in the late spring to be adopted and implemented for the 23-24 school year and beyond. So there's been a lot of work done to create a strategic plan that sets goals and objectives to work toward, and it incorporates the challenges that have been that existed pre-COVID, but also have been amplified through the COVID pandemic. That will be coming before this Teaching and Learning Committee and the board again later in this school year, as we pilot it and make tweaks and adjustments based on implementation.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Lombard?
Not at this time, thank you.
Mr. Sokolovic?
Oh, yes, it's likely not going to make much sense because we're too far down this path, and I've slowly come to the severe dislike of these terms, learning loss and students catching up. I think it's really very stressful, and it's like, I think it's not realistic, but the ultimate best thing in my mind would have been to do is go back in time, and instead of trying to force our children to catch up, it's just to slow the world down a little bit, because we're putting a lot on our kids to catch up, and I think as we proceed to catch up, because the rest of the world's not going to slow down, and I don't want our children to be in a disadvantage, but as we implement these plans, we got to be careful not to let our children think that they're behind and that they need to catch up and put all the stress on them to catch up to artificial deadlines set by society, while at the same time competing with their peers. I've been slowly getting horrified by the actions the whole country has taken on this issue, and it's like an evolution of thought that's really scary for me.
I don't dispute what you're saying. I don't think that's the rhetoric and the conversation that's being had in the classroom with the children. I think teachers and administrators and staff members are cognizant of it, but I do think that they are meeting students where they are, and that's why we stress growth and more than hitting these targets that are set on state assessments. I think the growth is what we really celebrated last year, especially at the end of the year. From beginning to end, we saw the significant growth, and especially in our primary grades, and we're just going to continue to build off of that. I don't think within the classroom you're hearing a lot of the terminology that's discussed openly by adults, and like you mentioned, in TV and the news and everything else.
Yeah, and I feel the kids, they hear that, and somewhat they can feel that a bit.
It's a lot of pressure to put on children.
I wish we had a do-over.
I think a year to do over would have been nice.
Mr. Benahan?
No question, no comment this moment, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Ms. Allen?
No.
I hear and understand and can somewhat understand the idea of stigmatism associated with learning loss and the positivity surrounded by growth. I'm still of the mind frame though, if we have schools with 100% failure and not meeting or exceeding proficiency, something has to change. Something fundamentally has to change. And we can celebrate growth, but if that growth doesn't show itself on test scores, or I understand that part of the district, some of the challenges we do experience is that children move from one school to another, even out of the district, but to prepare them for overall academic achievement, they can't come from Bridgeport with failing the standardized test or not meeting or exceeding proficiency and then go to another district and not be there. I guess, you know, it's not, I guess. I know that we have to implement some kind of standard for our children, and this is somewhat of a wake-up call because we can't have 80% of our kids not proficient. I don't think it's acceptable that we have 90% and that 80% is in ELA. I don't think it's acceptable that 90% of our students are not proficient in math. And I don't think that the fact that 83% of our students are not proficient in science is acceptable at all. And so whether it's something that as a community, because it's not only just our teachers, but support for our families at home, because our students do go through a lot, and I see why we're comparing them to certain school districts. Something has to change, and yes, we can celebrate growth, but when I see 100% failure in certain schools, there needs to be a balance of the reality of what comes with the world. I do have one comment, Mr. Testani. You said that the plan would be coming mid-school year or towards the spring semester?
It'll be up for,
Mike.
when it'll be presented through, to the board for approval, correct?
Do you have like a transition plan for who's going to continue to spearhead it once you're no longer here?
The committee that was charged to work on the strategic plan was not led by me. This wasn't a top-down approach. It has key representation of folks from the district, also co-chaired by Professor Renee Rozelle from Sacred Heart University. So this should have no issues carrying forth throughout the rest of the school year and beyond. That's, I think, one of the major pitfalls in strategic planning. If it's a top-down, in instances where there's change in leadership, usually those plans sit on a shelf and then are never revisited. This is not the intention here in Bridgeport. It was to create a document that people would refer to, people would utilize, people would be able to speak to, from the classroom teacher to the paraprofessional on up. So there should be no reason why this process will stall at any point. We have more than capable folks that are leading the charge on this.
Are there any other questions or comments from committee or board members? Okay, and so I believe that ends our fourth agenda item. So I'll entertain at this time a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The meeting has ended. The time now is 6:25. Thank you.
Thank you. That was good.